And meanwhile, Rhode Island Democratic Senator Jack Reed, the top Democrat on the Armed Services Committee, a West Point graduate and a veteran as well. Senator, thank you very much. What is your immediate reaction to the president's speech?
Well, I think both sides recognize that they're at the precipice, that they could find themselves in an uncontrollable escalation. So last evening, the attack by the Iranians, as several of your commentators suggested, was not as aggressive or robust as it could be. It was, in many respects, symbolic, but it was still a serious effort, firing rockets for the first time identifiably from Iran into Iraq to American bases. Mercifully, there were no casualties, and I think that gave both sides the opportunity to reassess the next step. And the president, I think, again recognized that they were very close to the precipice, and rather than initiating a counter-response, is now talking in terms of further sanctions. But as others have pointed out, there's very little left to sanction. Talking about, in general, sort of some type of discussions with the Iranians, but not relieving the maximum pressure campaign. And as a result, the Iranians, I think, will continue their efforts, only this time through proxies. I think politically in Iraq particularly, they will try to do all they can to effectuate the vote of their parliament to expel U.S. forces. And the loss of U.S. forces in Iraq would have consequences throughout the region. And then finally, the president made a great to-do about the JCPOA, but the reality is that the Iranians now are moving much quicker and much faster towards the capability of having a nuclear weapon, and Iran, rather, is moving that way. And with such a weapon, they'll be a much more dangerous adversary. We're looking at a similar phenomenon in North Korea, where we're trying to get them back in the box, and it's very, very difficult.
Senator, did you hear anything in that speech that answered questions that many on Capitol Hill are raising about the imminence of the threat that justifies the killing of Soleimani in Iraq, at Baghdad airport?
Right.
How ill-considered was that?
There was no discussion I heard about the imminence, and that's a critical factor because that was the first if you will, the first thing that everyone said about why they had to do it, why were they taking the hit in Iraq, one of our allies, why they didn't inform the Iraqi government, et cetera. Were there other means or methods to disrupt these attacks? I don't think Soleimani himself would have been involved in directing them. He was the overall strategic planner. So there's a whole set of issues with respect to imminence, and none of that was responded to. And my suggestion or sense is that they don't have a good answer.
And what do you want to hear from the military briefers about our relationship with Iraq, about the confusion over that letter signaling Iraq that we were okay with withdrawing our troops? Unprecedented confusion in what they did after the Soleimani killing.
The situation in Iraq politically is very challenging. First, a large portion of the Iraqi parliament has close ties to the Shia militias. That was evident in the vote. The Sunnis and the Kurds basically absented themselves from the vote, but the strong Shia majority voted for the prime minister's proposal. He's prepared to exact it. He's made comments to our ambassador that he expects it to be carried out. I think the Iranians now, working through their political means and their proxies, will try to get that in effect, that push our forces out. And then, of course, the popular militias, as Richard Engel pointed out, one of the victims of the assault, was a leader of one of the larger PMFs, Popular Mobilization Forces in Iran, and his own folks might feel that they have to take action regardless of the Iranians. So the situation is far from over, and it's not a situation where we're safer today than we were yesterday. You still have major threats in Iraq, and now you have what looks like a complete or virtually complete abandonment of the nuclear deal, and the Iranians will be racing towards a nuclear weapon, and that puts in the issue, how do we stop them from doing that if we've abandoned diplomacy?
And from my reporting, our European allies were not notified in advance either. And so now the president's calling on NATO to be more involved in the Middle East. But NATO is actually standing down on some of its training against ISIS in the region because they were not notified and felt that they had to protect their troops.
No, that's exactly correct. I was at Al-Assad in 2017. Most of the training was conducted by NATO. There was a Norwegian and a Scottish colonel that were running the training facilities. Now NATO, individual countries at least, are saying we have to bring our forces out to protect them. The United States announced a few days ago that they were stopping sort of their anti-ISIS activities for force protection reasons, both in Syria and Iraq. Again, the confusion and the turmoil and the conflict within Iraq could once again give rise to ISIS. Our security people, our intelligence people tell us that given the opportunity, given the headspace, if you will, ISIS will reconstitute. These are fanatical radicals that they will do that. And we could be in the ironic position of seeing the ISIS threat multiply, the Iranians actually go full out for a nuclear weapon, which would make the region and the situation less secure and less safe than it was just a few years ago.
Senator Jack Reed, I know it's a busy day on Capitol Hill. Thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you, Andrea.